for all that she let the crab apples rot on the avenue, would have had a fit if she knew we'd stolen them. I do feel sorry for her now. Her whole world was changing. At the time, we hated her, remember? She was rich, we were poor. It was all so simple in our heads. When nothing's simple, is it? I don't know what I'd do without your telling me all the gossip. I'd know nothing. Although, it seems so distant to me now. Lissowen, Eddie, Mick, Kit and Nora. From another world, and another life. Do you ever feel that? Fania broke off the email at that point, feeling stupid. Isabel, who'd been to the tiny wooden-framed school with her in Lissowen all those years ago, would not feel the same at all. Isabel had stayed in Cari, and had married a man who'd gone on to be a police sergeant in Lissowen itself, which gave her an interesting view into the inner workings of a busy Cari tourist spot. It also meant Isabel had had to remain on the outskirts of things. She could be involved, but people didn't always tell her things, as she was considered an unpaid part of the police force. The person who asked how Isabel was feeling was her longtime friend, so many thousands of miles away. The friend who'd reached out to her from New York all those years ago. Because Fania knew Isabel would never tell anyone, that her secret would be safe. There was a comfort, Fania knew, in telling someone you never saw so many personal things. An email to an old friend in another country was like therapy, without the $170 price tag. One could be straightforward and honest, knowing the person you were writing to would not meet the other parties described, knowing there would be no judgment. Just kindness, understanding, and the odd comment of such clarity that it cut through hours of meaningless chatter from other people. And yet, Fania could not say everything. Not anymore. 30 years before, she'd told Isabel, via the flimsy paper of an airmail letter, that her marriage to Chuck had broken up, and the hideous irony of why. Years later, when Isabel and Fania herself had thought she was married to her job, she'd revealed how surprising and wonderful it had been to meet the much older Marvin, and how they'd married in a civil ceremony that made it easier to meld Jewish and lapsed Catholic faiths. She'd written, when email had taken over, about Marvin's adult children and grandchildren, and what a joy they were in her life. She'd written about Martin's inexorable decline into dementia, and how that cruel disease made her feel like a widow for 4 years before she'd actually become one. How she'd cared for Marvin with such love, how her heart had broken when he'd had to go into full-time care. And she'd written about the shock of his death, how she'd slowly come out of the ache of widowhood from a marriage that had, for months, been in name only, with a man who would smile that familiar smile at her in the care home and say, "Who are you?" when she'd visit. She went every day. It was only right. Marvin had cared for her, and her last act of kindness to him had to be caring for him. In the same way, Isabel had written and later emailed about the goings-on of Lissowen, of her own family, and why her daughter was still going out with that lout who ran the tour bus company. I can't say it to anyone else, Fania, in case she finds out that I hate him, but he won't ever marry her. She's stone mad about him, and her fertile years have practically slipped away waiting for him. Fania, who worked in a chic downtown department store as the personal shopper to the rich women of San Francisco, had seen many of her staff and many of her clients caught in the same trap. All the arguing and convincing in the world could never convince these women that their man, the man they adored,